specific snippets in order to answer the reasoning within the text questions that follow. These questions will require you to demonstrate that you know how to think about the author's reasoning, and they'll also test your ability to analyze the strength of, evidence within component parts of the particular argument that the author's trying to make. Okay, so good luck and happy reading. The questions really aren't that bad. One study found that these effects seem to have been driven by traits attributed to the faces, specifically power, a composite of ratings of dominance and facial maturity, and warmth, a composite of ratings of likability and trustworthiness. Republican faces were perceived as more powerful than Democrats to the extent that a face was perceived as powerful, it was more likely to be categorized as Republican. On the other hand, the warmer a face was perceived, the more likely it was to be categorized as a Democrat. Other studies have also found relationships between facial traits and perceived political ideology. For example, one study found that conservative politicians in Finland were more attractive than candidates on the political left. In yet another study, politicians judged to be conservative were more attractive, intelligent looking, and of higher social class than those judged to be more liberal. These judgments can have electoral consequences. Surviving research. Well, I just want you to know that this definition is in brackets, isn't a part of the original text. It's just that oftentimes I find that students have trouble with the words that I will define via the bracketed, snippets. So that's just a little extra, okay? So although the extant research has provided important information about factors that may underlie categorizations of faces according to political party affiliation, it may be limited in some critical ways. These studies focus primarily on the target in isolation from the perceiver. It is important to note that this research draws from ideas based in an ecological theory of perception adapted to theories of ecological social perception. These theories argue that faces signal certain things to perceivers about what the target may afford. A target may appear, for instance, more or less trustworthy or dominant, which may lead the perceiver to trust or fear that person accordingly. However, it is likely that the accuracy of categorizing ambiguous targets is driven at least in part by the perceiver's identities, dispositions, or tastes. For example, it is known that perceptions of ambiguous group members may be influenced by perceivers' attitudes towards the groups or exposure to members of the group. One study found that heterosexual perceivers who had more experience with gay men were better at categorizing gay faces. Similarly, it is plausible that categorizations and trait ascriptions of Democrat and Republican faces may differ based on the political ideology of the perceiver judge. There does exist some evidence that other perceiver identities and ideologies influence categorizations and judgments based on political affiliation. For instance, one study found that people categorized faces as political in-group or out-group members largely as a function of likability. Another recent study found that perceiver gender influences ratings towards male and female politicians. Paragraph 3. Target political affiliation may interact with perceiver identity in another important way. In addition to accurate perceptions of political ideology, one study found that participants were more likely to classify faces as outgroup members than as in-group members. These findings are consistent with a more general in-group over-exclusion effect. The in-group over-exclusion effect is thought to be a result of motivated social cognitions related to social identity, such that people tend to be protective of the in-group. As a result of this protectiveness, perceivers may show a default bias toward categorizing others as outgroup members. This may be the case especially when groups are perpetually ambiguous. Not perpetually, perceptually ambiguous. For example, one group of scholars have observed an in-group over-exclusion effect for racially ambiguous targets, finding that Northern Italians, who had strongly identified as such, were more likely to exclude ambiguous targets that had a mix of Northern and Southern Italian features. The author's mentioning of over-exclusion and the Northern Italian study strengthened the author's central argument because A. In-group behavior emphasizes the importance of individual identity in making judgments. B. The Northern Italy study completely debunks the ecological theory of perception. C. The fact that ambiguity leads people to exclude more than include shows judgment inaccuracy. Or D. Previous studies had failed to present the perceiver with ambiguities that were real to life. Definitely press pause if you need to, and I'll give you a moment to think. If you're having difficulty answering, open up a second window to view the passage and find the text support for selecting the correct answer choice. All right. As mentioned earlier, this is a reasoning within the text question, and it wants you to think about the author's reasoning, okay? All right, so, let's take a look at paragraph 3. The Northern Italy study discussed in paragraph 3 shows that social identity, for example, identifying with being Northern Italian, affected the way that people judged others. When asked about whether another person also belonged to the same social group, Northern Italians tended to exclude people with ambiguous mixed features more often than people who were not Northern Italian themselves. This study highlights the fact that an individual's own personal attributes can play a big role in the way that a person categorizes someone else, which is what answer choice A is alluding to. The author never claimed that the ecological theory of perception is totally wrong. So answer choice B, we're gonna get rid of that. In addition, the accuracy of the judgments that people make about political or social affiliations of others, which is mentioned in answer choice C, is not the author's central argument, okay? So this is wrong as well. And finally, the author never criticizes the previous studies for lack of realism. That's never mentioned. So again, the correct answer is answer choice A. In-group behavior emphasizes the importance of individual identity in making judgment. All right. Supported by the passage with evidence. A, the in-group over-exclusion effect. B, impact of perceivers' political ideologies. C, the impact of gender. Or D, the theory of ecological social perception. Definitely press pause if you need to, and I'll give you a moment to think. You may need to open up the passage in a second window to search for the text support to select the correct answer choice. All right. Okay, so for this second reasoning within the text question, let's also look at paragraph 3. In paragraph 3, the in-group over-exclusion effect, which is what answer choice A is specifying, is supported by a study that, quote, in addition to accurate perception of political identity, showed Northern Italians were more likely to exclude those who had a mix of Northern and Southern Italian features. Paragraph 1 describes studies that found a relationship between perceived traits such as warmth, intelligence, attractiveness, and class, and perceived political affiliation. Paragraph 2 explains that the studies described in paragraph 1 are grounded in the ecological theory of social perception, which is what answer choice D is saying. Let's see, in paragraph 2, the author also writes, quote, it's important to note that this research draws from the ideas based in an ecological theory of perception adapted to the theories of ecological social perception, all right? In paragraph 2, the author writes, it is likely that the accuracy of categorizing ambiguous targets is driven at least in part by the perceiver's identity, dispositions, and states. However, the author then refers to the studies that look at qualities of the perceivers that are not political, such as gender, which is what answer choice C is saying, or personal experiences with certain groups. Okay, the author never cites examples of evidence of how the political ideology of the perceiver, although you might think this, initially because political ideology is just all over the passage and perceiver, this is put in there to trip you up. It's not correct. Answer choice B is, well, it's the correct answer choice, but it's not strongly supported by the passage. Because, as I was saying before, the author never cites examples or evidence of how the political ideology of the perceiver impacts the perceiver's perception of the other's political affiliation. Okay, that's just not mentioned. So the correct answer choice is answer choice B. Impact of perceivers' political ideologies.